Every year, millions of people give plants as gifts without having the slightest idea of what they are handing over along with the pot. A nice gesture, a detail for a friend, a neighbor, a mother, something alive, something that grows, something that seems impossible could cause any harm. And yet, in practically all ancient traditions around the world, there are plants that are never given as gifts. Plants that, according to beliefs that have remained intact for centuries in completely different cultures, carry with them the energy of the person who gives them and transfer it to the new home in ways that are not always positive. This is not unfounded superstition. These are traditions that have survived the passage of time because the people who practice them have observed patterns that repeat over and over again. Someone gives one of these plants as a gift, and shortly afterward, something changes. Sometimes in the house that receives it, sometimes in the house that gives it, sometimes in both. And when those observations accumulate over entire generations, they stop being coincidences and become popular wisdom. In more than 20 years of growing plants, I have met dozens of experienced gardeners who never give certain plants as gifts, not out of stinginess, but out of respect, out of knowing the unwritten rules of the plant world, out of knowing that there are things you buy, things you exchange, and things you simply do not give. The 5 plants presented in this video are precisely those, the ones every experienced gardener knows should not be given as gifts, and the reasons go far beyond what most people imagine. Plant 1, Rue, Ruta graveolens, the protector that is not shared. Rue tops this list for a reason that anyone who knows this plant understands immediately. Rue is, above all, a plant of personal protection. It is a shield, a guardian. And shields are not lent or given as gifts, because doing so leaves the person who gives it exposed. Throughout Latin America, from Mexico to Argentina, there is a deeply rooted belief that says rue that is given as a gift loses its power of protection for the person who gives it. Even worse, some traditions claim that when someone gives away their rue, they are also handing over part of their own energetic protection. It is like opening a door that should remain closed. The plant remains alive, it continues to grow, but the protective connection with its original owner is broken. And that break can leave a void that takes time to fill. From a botanical point of view, there is something interesting that partially supports this tradition. Rue develops a very particular relationship with the soil where it grows and with the environment that surrounds it. Its roots release allelopathic compounds that modify the chemistry of the surrounding soil, creating a microecosystem specifically adapted to that plant in that exact location. When a rue plant is uprooted from its spot to be given as a gift, that underground network of chemical connections that the plant had built over months or years is broken. It is literally an uprooting. Tradition indicates that rue should be bought, or even better, should arrive on its own. Many experienced gardeners claim that the best rue is the one that appears spontaneously in the garden, the one that no one planted, the one that the wind or the birds brought without anyone asking for it. That rue, they say, is the one with the most power, the one that chose that home for a reason. And there is one aspect of rue that makes giving it as a gift especially delicate. This plant, as has been mentioned in previous videos, has the reputation of absorbing negative energies. If someone gives their rue to another person, there is a possibility that the plant carries with it part of the energy it has absorbed in its original home. One would not be giving just a plant. One would be transferring an accumulated energetic load that the recipient did not ask for and probably does not need. Traditional healers who work with rue have a very clear rule about this. Protective rue is personal and non-transferable. You can recommend that someone buy their own rue. You can teach them how to grow it. You can explain where to place it. But you never give them your own. That line is not crossed. Even in traditional plant markets, the most knowledgeable vendors advise that when you buy a new rue plant, You should leave it in the sun for 3 days before bringing it into the house so that it cleans itself of the energies from the place where it was before. If that is recommended even with a purchased plant, it is even more understandable why giving away a used rue is something that those in the know prefer to avoid. Plant 2. The cactus, the gift that stabs more than thorns. Cacti are probably the most commonly given plants in the world. They are cheap, resilient, require almost no care, and come in such varied and eye-catching shapes that they are irresistible as gifts. And yet, in many traditions related to the energy of the home, giving a cactus as a gift is one of the worst gifts you can make. The main reason has to do with the spines. The spines are, in essence, modified leaves that the plant developed as a defense mechanism in hostile environments. They are tips designed to repel, to prick, to keep things at a distance. And according to feng shui traditions, Latin American popular culture, and various energetic harmonization currents, spines generate what is known as cutting energy, an energy that disperses, that fragments, that creates tension in the environment where it is located. Giving a cactus as a gift, according to these traditions, is giving conflict. It is introducing into someone else's home an element that can generate arguments, misunderstandings, frictions between the inhabitants of the house. Not because the cactus is a bad plant, but because its defensive energy is designed for environments where aggressive protection is needed, not for spaces where harmony and peace are sought. This does not mean that cacti are negative plants. In their natural environment, in an outdoor garden, on a sunny balcony, cacti fulfill magnificent functions. They are extraordinary survivors that store water in impossible conditions, that bloom in the most hostile deserts, that demonstrate that life finds a way even where it seems impossible. That resilience is admirable, but that same energy of survival in extreme conditions is not always what a home needs. The specific problem with giving a cactus as a gift is that the person who receives it did not choose that energy for their house. They did not consciously decide that they needed a defensive plant. And when that energy arrives uninvited, without context, without intention, it can unbalance spaces that were calm, especially if the cactus is placed in the bedroom, the kitchen, or the living room, which are the spaces where energy should flow in a soft and welcoming way. There is an important exception that experts usually mention. If the person who is going to receive the cactus has specifically asked for it, if they have expressed their desire to have one, then the gift changes its nature. It is no longer an energetic imposition, but a response to a conscious need. The recipient's intention transforms the meaning of the gift. But giving a cactus as a surprise, without knowing if the other person wants it or needs it, is a risk that many traditions recommend avoiding. A curious detail that few know is that in some regions of Mexico, when someone receives a cactus as a gift and does not want it, tradition says they should bury a coin in the pot to neutralize the cutting energy of the spines. The coin, a symbol of prosperity, counteracts the dispersing effect of the tips. It is a traditional remedy that reflects the complexity of the relationships between plants, energy, and homes. Plant 3. Ivy, Hedera helix. The climber that takes everything. Ivy is one of the most beautiful and elegant plants that exist. Its shiny green leaves, cascading down from shelves and hanging pots, have an undeniable decorative appeal. But behind that beauty, there is a nature that popular traditions have observed with caution for centuries. Ivy is a parasitic plant, not in the strict botanical sense, because technically it produces its own energy through photosynthesis, but in its behavior. Ivy climbs, grabs, spreads, invades, covers, and eventually suffocates the plants and structures it uses as support. In nature, ivy can cover an entire tree until it kills it from lack of light. It can penetrate the cracks in a wall and weaken it from within. It can spread through a garden until it completely dominates it, if not controlled. Giving ivy as a gift, according to many traditions, is giving that invasive behavior. It is introducing into someone else's home an energy that spreads uncontrollably, that absorbs, that takes more than it gives. Some traditions go further and claim that giving ivy can generate emotional dependence between the person who gives it and the person who receives it. The plant acts as an invisible bond that connects the two homes in ways that are not always healthy. In feng shui, climbing plants in general are considered problematic inside the home because their erratic growth disrupts the flow of energy. Ivy, in particular, with its tendency to grow in all directions and to cling to any surface, represents energetic chaos. And that chaos, when it arrives as a gift, is perceived as especially intrusive because it was not chosen by the recipient. From a practical point of view, giving ivy as a gift has another problem that few mention. Ivy is extremely difficult to remove once it has established itself. If the person who receives it later decides they do not want it, completely removing it can be a complicated task. The aerial roots adhere to the walls, the stems tangle with other plants, and the fragments left in the soil can sprout again. It is a gift that, literally, is hard to get rid of. There is a popular expression in some Mediterranean countries that says, "Ivy is like certain guests." It arrives with a smile, settles in without asking permission, and then there is no way to make it leave. And that analogy perfectly reflects why this plant, no matter how beautiful it is, should not be given lightly. Ivy has its place in outdoor gardens, covering ugly walls, hiding rusty fences, creating green curtains on well-controlled pergolas. There it fulfills a magnificent function, but as a gift introduced into someone else's home without context or control, traditions agree that it is better to avoid it. Plant 4. Hydrangeas. Hydrangea. The flower that takes away luck in love. Hydrangeas are spectacular. Their enormous clusters of blue, pink, white, or purple flowers are among the most impressive things the plant world can offer. And precisely because of that, they are one of the most popular gifts. Birthdays, housewarmings, Mother's Day. Hydrangeas appear everywhere as gifts. But in several traditions, especially in Asian cultures and in some popular European currents, giving hydrangeas is considered a serious mistake. The main reason is related to love and romantic relationships. In Japan, where hydrangeas grow abundantly and are deeply respected as an ornamental plant, there is a tradition that associates hydrangea with loneliness and rejection. Giving hydrangeas to a single person, according to this tradition, can prolong their single status. Giving them to a couple can cool the relationship. The hydrangea, with all its external beauty, is considered a cold plant from an energetic point of view. This association has an interesting observational basis. Hydrangeas need enormous amounts of water to maintain their flowers. They are extremely demanding plants in that sense. They absorb so much water from the soil that other nearby plants can wilt from lack of hydration. That absorbent nature, that constant need to receive, is interpreted symbolically as an energy that takes more than it contributes to relationships. In feng shui, hydrangeas are considered plants that stagnate romantic energy. Their flowers, although voluminous and showy, are composed of small, sterile flowers that do not produce seeds or fruit. They are pure appearance without productive result, and that quality, translated into the symbolic realm, represents relationships that look good on the outside but do not generate real fruit. Lots of beauty, little content, lots of form, little substance. Giving hydrangeas to someone who is looking for a partner or who is going through a delicate moment in their romantic relationship is, according to these traditions, one of the worst gifts possible. Not because the plant has bad intentions, but because its natural energy is not compatible with what that person needs at that moment in their life. There is an exception that some traditions recognize. If hydrangeas are planted directly in the outdoor garden, in contact with the earth and exposed to natural rain, their absorbent energy is balanced with the energy of the environment. The problem arises when they are kept in a pot inside the house, where their constant need for water creates a dynamic of demand that alters the energetic balance of the home. As with everything related to plants and energy, intention matters. But when you give something to another person, the intention of the giver is not always enough to counteract the natural properties of what is being given. And in the case of hydrangeas, those properties are too heavily loaded with symbolism to ignore. Plant 5. Dieffenbachia, Dieffenbachia, the silent gift that no one should make. The last plant on this list is perhaps the most dangerous of all, and not only in energetic terms. Dieffenbachia is an extraordinarily popular indoor plant. Its large leaves, green with white or cream spots, make it very attractive as a decorative element. It is sold in all nurseries, in all florists, in all supermarkets that have a gardening section. And it is constantly given as a gift. However, there are strong reasons not to give this plant, ranging from the spiritual to the purely physical. The popular name of Dieffenbachia in many countries is revealing. It is known as the dumb plant, the silence plant, or in some regions, the quiet man plant. These names are not coincidental. The sap of Dieffenbachia contains calcium oxalate crystals that, upon contact with the mouth, tongue, or throat, cause such intense inflammation that it can prevent speech for hours. In severe cases, it can make breathing difficult. It is one of the most toxic indoor plants that exist, especially dangerous in homes with small children or pets. Giving a plant that can cause physical harm to the person who receives it is by itself reason enough to think twice. But popular traditions add an additional layer of meaning. In several Latin American cultures, it is believed that Dieffenbachia silences not only the physical voice, but also the inner voice. Having it in the home can inhibit communication between family members. Important topics are not discussed, conflicts are silenced, feelings are kept inside, and that accumulated silence, that interrupted communication, can deteriorate relationships in ways that at first are subtle, but over time become deep. From the feng shui point of view, Dieffenbachia is considered a plant that blocks the flow of communication in the home. Its energy tends to create stagnation in interpersonal relationships. And when that energy arrives as a gift, without the recipient having sought or chosen it, the effect can be especially pronounced because it enters the home without any counterweight or conscious intention. Dieffenbachia has another quality that makes it a problematic gift. It is a plant that grows quickly and becomes large, very large. An adult Dieffenbachia can reach 1.5 meters in height with leaves more than 30 centimeters long. It takes up space. It dominates the room where it is. And that dominant presence, combined with its silencing energy, can make the atmosphere of a room change gradually but perceptibly. It is not uncommon to find people who say that since they have a Dieffenbachia in their living room or bedroom, their conversations with their partner or family have become more superficial, scarcer, more forced. It could be coincidence, it could be suggestion, but when the pattern repeats in so many different experiences, traditions take note and issue their warning. This plant is not given as a gift. If someone decides to have a Dieffenbachia in their house by their own choice, knowing what it represents and taking the necessary precautions to avoid contact with its sap, it is a respectable personal decision. But imposing it as a gift in someone else's home, without informing them of its risks or its symbolism, is a responsibility that no conscious gardener should assume. There is an invisible thread that connects these 5 plants and the reason why they should not be given as gifts. In all cases, the problem is not the plant itself. Each of these plants has valuable qualities, specific functions, and its own beauty. The problem is the transfer. the act of taking something that has a certain charge, whether protective, defensive, invasive, absorbent, or silencing, and placing it in another person's space without their full knowledge. Giving plants as gifts is a beautiful gesture when done with knowledge and respect for what each plant represents. There are dozens of wonderful plants to give as gifts. Pothos, which brings prosperity and grows anywhere. The ribbon plant, or love ribbon, which purifies the air and symbolizes connection. The jade plant, which attracts good fortune. Rosemary, which protects and awakens the mind. Those are plants that are given with joy and without risk. But the 5 presented here are different. They are plants that ask to be chosen, not imposed. That need to arrive in the home by the decision of the person who is going to care for them, not by the well-intentioned impulse of the one who gives them. And that distinction, which may seem subtle, is the difference between a gift that adds and a gift that, unintentionally, subtracts. The next time someone thinks about giving a plant as a gift, it is worth pausing for a moment, looking at the plant, thinking about what it represents, considering whether it is something that can be given freely or something that should stay where it is. That moment of reflection, that instant of awareness before acting, is exactly what separates an ordinary gardener from one who truly understands the silent language of plants.